Welcome to Building Texas with Justin McKenzie and Summer Babarek. Sponsored by the Boerne Kendall County Economic Development Corporation and Das GreenHaus. And now, here's your host, Justin McKenzie.
Welcome to Building Texas, where we sit down with the most interesting people who are making an impact across the state. Texas is growing fast. How are you building a bridge between your dreams and the reality of the blooming Texas economy? Today, we're joined by Luis Martinez, a Harvard-trained chemist, turned his PhD into a career that has touched many lives. Recently, you may recognize his name as an award-winning director of the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Trinity University, where he helped over 65 Trinity student ventures, raising over $60 million in external funding. Today, you're with the Capital Factory. We'll look forward to jumping into that conversation later, but Summer, you recommended Luis as a guest.
I did. I am so excited to have Luis here today because our friendship goes way back past Capital Factory, back into even before his Trinity days, if memory serves. So we met back in 2013 when I was in my undergrad at UTSA, and I was in the Center for Innovation, Technology, and Entrepreneurship program, which is the SITE program, which is a student venture competition that UTSA used to have, where a group of engineering students were paired with a group of business students. Engineering students had developed a product or a prototype of a product, and the business students had to write the business plan, build financials, and then pitch the business. And so Trinity had just launched, I think, if memory serves. Okay.
We just launched our entrepreneurship program. Christoph Glanchai was my predecessor, so he spent a couple of years sort of getting it off the ground, and then I came in, and I believe that event that we met was one of the very first events I attended here in San Antonio.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. So there we go. So I've known him a long time, and Justin, I'm sure it'll really shock you. I did not work with a group of engineers that had already picked a product. I didn't like any of those existing.
So it was your decision.
Right. It was. I didn't like any of them, and none of them wanted to work on my idea. So I actually had petitioned the dean to do the competition on my own without engineering students. And he had, he gave me permission to do that. He said, the only caveat is you got to have a prototype. And I had developed this idea based on a really long labor and delivery with my first daughter. And so I said, that's fine. And so I became that creepy girl that hung out in the engineering building asking people, what kind of engineer are you? Do you want to work on this project? It was crazy.
I can't put myself in that engineering hallway and think about what it would be you sitting there, because your first product, we've never really talked about it.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal idea, actually.
It's a great product.
Really, I remember seeing the pitch, and you won that year, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Hearing that pitch and then coming up to you and being like, wow, this was really awesome. Like, there's a need for it. There's a market for it. There's a place for it. Like, you should pursue this and make this happen.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we keep everyone on the edge of their seats about what this product is. I think it's a testament to the education system and how somebody like Summer, who I did not know as a business mind or an engineering mind, coming into school, learning that, seeing an opportunity, and then figuring out how to make it happen. Mm-hmm. And I think, Luis, it's a testament to educators across the country at this level that help take people to that next.
Thanks. I mean, I'm really privileged to have been part of a community of incredible entrepreneurship educators who are about helping young men and women about starting their first thing and doing it for real. And this wave of sort of entrepreneurship education sort of started about sort of 2010, 2008. It's now sort of the standard practice in which entrepreneurship education is done. And what's really been exciting is that not only is it something that's sort of the collegiate side, but now we're seeing it with sort of high school incubator programs like the one you've got here in Boerne. It's happening at the high school level. We've got elementary school kids, right? We've got grade school kids that are out there learning how to solve real problems and build ventures around them. As I mentioned, my predecessor, Christoph Glanchai, she left Trinity to pursue as an entrepreneur Venture Labs, which was about getting entrepreneurship education to young girls as young as 5. So it's been really this incredible last 10 years as we're seeing a huge emphasis on people doing it for real. And then what's exciting as well, in part because of where we are today with so much content that's available and information that's available on the internet and on YouTube, the tools and the barriers of being able to start businesses are actually so much more reduced now than they were 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So the fact that content's available, the fact that it's easier now to be building something. And then everyone has in their pocket and in their purse, like, the world.
Right.
So access to a global marketplace, access to manufacturing, access to marketing, access to channels of being able to sort of communicate your product offerings and to sell your product offerings and to then get paid. Like, that's really sort of exciting. So we are in an exciting time in the 2020s, 2024 now, as we approach this new year, for we are not only in entrepreneurship education, but also entrepreneurship overall.
Yeah. I think what you guys built at Trinity, you built it so fast.
Thank you.
And it was so well done. I think the only thing I'm really disappointed about from that era is I don't think that UTSA still has its site student pitch competition, but Trinity does.
It does. So we, while I was there, we launched our venture competition. And one of the interesting things that we did about that program that was unique was that we set it up as a staged competition. So in the competition you participated in, it sort of at the site, it was like, congratulations, like, it's the big prize and you're done, right? Like, it was sort of, that was it. Mm-hmm. We developed it as a staged, as a way of doing two things. One, leveraging risk, right?
Right.
It's one thing to cut a big check for like $50,000 or $25,000 to one team, and like, that's a lot. So we set it up as a staged sort of competition where in the spring we'd have an open call, people would be able to sort of pitch their ideas, and then we would choose 5 finalists from that experience. And those 5 finalists then would compete amongst themselves for the much larger check. So it was a way of sort of mitigating risk. But we're an educational institution, right? So it's not about our return on investment isn't necessarily like, will those companies go off and raise money, and will we get, some level of return on that? The return on investment is like, did you learn anything, right? Did you teach them anything? So what was really exciting about that program, and it's now been replicated in a lot of other places, is that those 5 teams would then go through sort of a summer accelerator incubator program. Mm-hmm. And so they would learn the sort of basics of building a business. So if they were an engineer and knew how to build something, but they didn't know anything about how to set up their company or company formation, they'd get started. If there were marketer folks that understand something about sort of how the business or the legal side would work as well. So we really spent sort of a really thoughtful 10, 12 weeks in really getting them from point A to something greater than point A. And then you'd be evaluated, and some money, you'd be evaluated on what you did with that cash, and you'd be evaluated then on the progress that you made. And then that sort of big check turns off to be the initial launching pad. Mm-hmm. And as we all know, there's a huge need in that very early stage, high risk capital, in that sort of quote unquote friends and family round. And so it was a way for us to provide some of that additional capital, $25,000, to sort of a early friend and family, and sort of to change the model slightly so that, what's the value of higher education? Well, one value is that we'll write your first check as a friend and family to get you started in the company. And then what's exciting is that as a typical sort of undergraduate, you've got 2-4 years as an undergraduate, you get a chance to build utilizing the resources of the university and the cash while you're there. And if you fail, well, you're still on mom and dad's insurance, and maybe you're living in the dorm and eating dorm food. So the barrier to failure is very different than starting a company in your 30s, right? So the opportunity to do something, and I was really privileged to be a part of building that at Trinity, and we made it into a globally recognized entrepreneurship program. It's been exciting to see and engage with programs around the world who've taken some of our lessons that we've learned, some of the great experiences that we've had, and be able to sort of implement that across the country and across the world.
Well, you mentioned it earlier. I think it is nationally a phenomenon that this is going earlier into education. I have a friend, Amber, out of Wimberley in Austin, that has Startup Kids Club. And she'll take a trailer full of 3D printers to birthday parties and get kids interested in making their own thing or creating an opportunity. But then we go to the Incubator EDU program at Boerne, which is on its 4th year. We're going to have 9 competitive teams. Yeah. It's going to be great, but we're going to have to filter from 9 to 5 and get them to a big check. But I look at Alamo Heights. Alamo Heights has been doing that program for over 20 years now. Their incubator is built on high school kids coming out of it and being successful. They've got some great stories. So I'm seeing it all around San Antonio. Yes. And that's exciting, but I think it's a national phenomenon that's happening.
It is. It's happening nationally. It's happening internationally as well. You can still, build your lemonade stand if you want, but you can also build a sort of global manufacturing company if you want in sort of high school. It's sort of really this exciting aspect to scale. And, if we think about this in the higher ed side, and we think about this then sort of post higher ed, there's going to be a really great, the talent pipeline is exciting. We're getting lots of people that are starting off early on, well, what's it like to build a thing for the first time? And whether it's a lemonade stand or whether it's, 3D printing something and then you're selling it on Etsy, it doesn't really matter. Like the skills of being able to do that for the first time, if you can get those kinds of reps, if you can get that kind of experience under your belt before you're 20, 22, 23, then what's exciting is that those lessons learned during your 20s and your 30s, you're kind of compressing that learning. So for many of us, we do that learning in our 30s and our 40s, and then we're ready to become entrepreneurs, right? You get to have and make that experience happen before you're in your 20s. And so the likelihood that then young people will then choose, and many of them are making this choice now, well, I could go corporate or I could go work for the small startup. Many of them are choosing working in that small startup. Or alternatively, and some of the great dynamics I think you're seeing here in Boerne as well, is that, well, I can work from here and work for someone else elsewhere.
Right.
And so that opportunity, whether it's a small startup or a large corporate, so we're really seeing a generational change. We're having a generational change of folks that not only are having experience building it, the startup, Shark Tank generation is what I like to call it. They kind of grew up on Shark Tank. And so it used to be cool. You would start a band. Now, if you want to be cool, you launch
start a company. Yeah. Well, and also you learn so much from your failures.
Yeah.
You learn way more from failure than you do from success. And so to have those early failures be early in life, you get to take those lessons and have your successes much earlier than life, which I should say much earlier in life. Then you can come back into the ecosystem as a mentor, as an investor, and it just feeds itself. It's such a great model.
You're listening to Boerne Radio 103.9 FM. We're here, Summer and I are joined by Luis Martinez, and we're talking venture.
Yes.
And I love, I regret not doing this earlier in life to make and experience that, because we all learned those lessons earlier. But what I see happening is it opens your eyes to how big the world is, how many opportunities. You're not doing what your parents did or what your neighbor, what you've seen. I've seen it in the incubator class. So many of the kids say, yeah, it was just great to see that there's so many options and how people and that's the mentors coming in. And we're sitting in Das GreenHaus right now, and Das GreenHaus exists to serve this entire cycle that you're talking about. You might be later in life, retiree, just coming to a choice community saying, I want to do something. Where can I go find people with a similar mindset? Well, that's why we're here. My fear is you can find places like Das GreenHaus in cities. You can't find them in small, rural Texas, but that's where a ton of innovation happens, particularly in ag tech and other markets that haven't fully developed.
Yeah, and that's really where one thing I used to tell my students is find the invisible, right? So if you can find that invisible thing that's out there that's kind of you take for granted, lighting, electricity, carpeting, adhesives in the wall, whatever. If you like find the invisible, and I think that for many folks that don't necessarily live in cities, it's easy to find that invisible because you're surrounded by it. Because in many cases, you've got to go out there and build it, or you've got to find a way of solving that problem in ways that is harder for folks to bridge when they're actually, you turn on the water and it works, right? You turn on the electricity and it works. So I think there's great opportunities in rural. I think there's phenomenal opportunities in manufacturing. If we think about the kinds of transformational changes that tech can bring to agriculture, to irrigation, to monitoring. If we think about remote sensing, I think there's some phenomenal opportunities out there that it just takes people that are really excited about building and new ideas and approaching things in new ways that make the opportunity happen. So I've been honored to be mentoring for a long time and walk alongside many entrepreneurs. And I love working with entrepreneurs who say, hey, look, I've got this idea and I've had this problem. I think some of your experience, right? Like I had this challenge and there's got to be a better way.
Exactly.
So I'm going to go build it.
And to your point about rural areas, one of the things that, if you took somebody that maybe isn't engrossed in entrepreneurship, one of the criticisms that you get is these entrepreneurs, they come up with these wild ideas and they'll just build some stupid product that nobody wants and they think it's so cool and who cares? Well, one of the things that you see in rural entrepreneurship that sometimes you don't see as often in metropolitan entrepreneurship, if we're going to call it that, it's a very common sense approach. It's those simple solutions to the problem of this doesn't work. the way it should work, because what I need to do with these cattle, what I need to do with these crops, or what I need to do to get gas to this farm, that solution doesn't work. But I can show you what does, because the odds are that ranchers built it.
Oh, yeah.
So I love that aspect of it too.
Or they've built a prototype that, with just a little
tweaking.
just a little tweak. It's like, that's a scalable idea, right?
Right. And they don't care. They're
Don't
like,
care.
nope, my cattle have water. I don't care.
Well, we're working on innovation around honeybees right now
that's so
out of
cool.
here. And we're working on innovation out of wood waste, turning it into electricity. And this, I think to your point, rural America does solve problems in a common sense, get it done kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if in practicality that they need that immediate result. It's not a prototype. It's not, will it work? It's, I've got to solve this problem right now.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Capital Factory, because I think you find people in all parts of that spectrum. You find people with prototypes. You find people with ideas. You sit at a place where you see a lot of deal flow. What does that world look like? Everybody's hearing the market's turned and this, that, and the other, but innovation doesn't stop.
Yeah, so I'm privileged now, post my Trinity decade there, Tim and I'll be working as a senior venture associate with Capital Factory. And it's an incredible time, where we are post-COVID, sort of economic downturn. I've been through this cycle before where capital is low. I've been through this cycle before where interest rates are high. This is one of the best times to be building a company. And we're seeing really amazing, hungry founders that, because of sort of the macroeconomic climate, are really focused on building solid businesses where the business fundamentals are solid. So they're managing their cash flow. They're being really careful about runway. They're being very thoughtful about what the investments that they're making. And they're building customers that are going after paying, and they're building businesses that are going after paying customers. So this is an exciting time to be building businesses. And so for what we do at Capital Factory, we like to think of ourselves as the center of gravity for entrepreneurship in the state of Texas. We are aggregators of entrepreneurs, of investors, of customers, of talent. And we kind of want everyone to think about Texas as one big city. And that's sort of a big, audacious goal. If you think about all the venture activity that's happened in the state of Texas, that's only 7% of all VC funding that happens in the United States.
Which is ridiculous.
That's all of Texas.
Yeah, don't get summer started.
Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
We have such a
right?
huge economy. There's no way.
So can we think of Texas, instead of having Dallas and Austin and Houston and San Antonio fighting against each other, can we think of Texas as one big city, one big community? And can we leverage those resources across the entire state, where you're building a business here in Boerne, you've got investors in Austin and Houston and in Dallas, you've got collaborators in Houston, you've got some aspect of manufacturing or marketing taking place in San Antonio, right? Can we think about, you're doing clinical trials in the Valley or El Paso, like, can we think about people building businesses here in Texas where they're thinking about Texas as one big community? And so we're fortunate to be sort of that center of gravity. We're the most active early stage investor in the state of Texas. We see lots and lots of deals across the entire state. We've got boots on the ground here in San Antonio and Austin and Dallas and in Houston. And so we're constantly seeing deals. Our sweet spot are sort of seed to Series A. That's sort of where we are for our sweet spot of the companies that we are engaging with. But we love to be talking to founders and entrepreneurs earlier in that process. And then for those that are later on as well, we've got companies in our portfolio that enter us that are raising Series B or raising Series C because of that critical mass aspect of what we do. And so we help bring entrepreneurs together with investors. We've got over 1,300 investors in our investor pool. We ourselves also manage 2 of our own funds. So we approach every company we engage in what is now sort of our post-accelerator program, like as an investor. Like, we anticipate we'll be funding that deal in the future. Does it meet our criteria? Will it meet our criteria? Is it meeting those signals? We bring them to our investor networks. And then we've got this whole range of DoD work that we do as well that we're very excited about. And we're operating across the entire state, helping weave together resources and entrepreneurs throughout the state.
I'm thrilled to hear somebody say that, organizing the state as a collective, because the state of Texas is attracting founders, innovators, entrepreneurs all day long. The struggle that I think Summer and I experience out here is there is a conflict between growth and anti-growth.
Sure.
And I don't know, I think that's what prevents the state from working together. I see it at a micro level. Kendall County and Kerr County are competing for economic development. And I struggle with that concept because together I think we offer two very different products. But together as a region, we can solve 5 different problems, attract the right people that aren't going to be heavy water users, that are going to fit the culture and the resources of the area, and we're going to lift them up. Because I also see entrepreneurs coming out of the woodworks and they're wanting to start something before their job goes a different direction.
Well, I'm not saying it's easy, but we have to collaborate and cooperate because the world is flat. And we're looking at sort of all contained communities, whether they're in research, in the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina or in the Valley, Silicon Valley, or in Southern California or Denver. And so if we can say, look, the advantage to being in Texas is be wherever you think is the best place for you to be, we'll help connect you across the state. And so where is the best place for manufacturing? Well, it may not be in your backyard, but maybe your headquarters or your founders, the best place for them is to be here, or part of your team is to here, or your investors are here. And so it's a big, audacious goal. We called it our Texas Manifesto in 2017, sort of trying to have people think about Texas as one big sort of unit. And we're excited sort of 5 years in that's beginning to sort of take traction. And the great work that we're seeing with what you guys are doing here with the Angel Network here is showing that you can have angel networks and you have co-working spaces, you have accelerators and incubators, you've got founders throughout the state that are working and collaborating across the region. And Summer, I think your business and your company is a great example of this.
Well, I agree. And I also think that the Texans by nature are that way.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go somewhere where there isn't someone from Texas there. And as soon as they find out, oh, I'm from Texas too. Like, I was having a conversation with a very, very well-known, very nice accelerator program in healthcare with a big name hospital on one of the coasts. And the head of that accelerator when they select a company, they invest in the company and bring them in and give them all the resources of that healthcare system. He's from Alice, Texas.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I got you. I know where Alice is. I did a rodeo there. I watched the sun come up in Tilden. Texans are everywhere. And so I think it's really interesting that as a state, the people here naturally tend to be that way. And yet when we have, to this point in the ecosystem, it's all been very disjointed in how we're building. And so I love the idea that we're just going to take this concept that we've all been born and raised around and really just apply it to a new area where we're emerging, I think.
And I think one of the advantages is that, talking about sort of where we are here in Boerne, sort of the Texas Triangle and sort of the halo communities around San Antonio, Austin, like everyone gets to benefit because 70-80% of like the Texas population is in the Triangle. And guess what? You can get in the car and you can drive to San Antonio. You can get in the car and drive to Austin. You can hop on a bus and be in Houston or, quick Southwest flight. So the opportunity to travel and you're there in the morning, you're back at home in the evening, is really advantageous. One of the things I used to mentor, and I still mentor a lot of startups, and especially those that are thinking about sort of expanding regionally, I've exhausted the number of customers I could have in insert, right? I'm like, okay, where's your nearest airport? Yes. Where are the direct flights? Yes. Where's there a flight you can take first thing in the morning and then be back at home by 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night? Great. That's your region. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, I had no idea I could be selling in New Orleans or Denver or...
But that is the Southwest Airlines story. I mean, that is about as Texan story as it gets.
Yep.
They built that airport, our airline, founded at the St. Anthony Hotel in San Antonio. But they created it to serve the Triangle, and it has grown the Triangle single-handedly in a lot of ways. And now it's how do we take that next step? And I think fiber networks, and I have a bias towards electric co-ops and the cooperative rural America world really having broadband capabilities.
Oh, yeah.
Because that changes a community like Lakey I've been in the last few weeks. They've got fiber internet out there. So now they have a whole new opportunity for a remote workforce, for a different quality of life, for stronger education. But that little city has to figure out what to do with it, how to attract, how to market. that, hey, we're in the middle of nowhere. We're in the Swiss Alps of Texas. We've got fiber internet to your home. Come work out here. That might be a great fit for them.
Yeah.
Whereas in Boerne, we're attracting a different thing. Or in El Paso has always been an underutilized resource, I think. There's a lot of stuff
El Pasoan, I'll be one of the first ones to be like, yeah, go El Paso. It's exciting. One of the things I get to do for Capital Factory as well is get to cover El Paso as well as the Valley. What's interesting about El Paso?
Shout out to the Valley.
Shout out to the Valley. Love my hint down in the Valley. One great thing about El Paso is that it sort of sits in that sort of really interesting sort of north-south corridor of sort of Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Denver, Chihuahua, as well as east-west. So you go east and it's either Austin, San Antonio, or Dallas, Fort Worth, and you go west and it's Tucson and Phoenix. And so they're in this really interesting juncture that, as you mentioned, like hasn't really had the opportunity to really take advantage of that nexus.
I always say we have all of the ingredients. El Paso's there's high net worth individuals. There's academic rigor with UTEP. The military's there in a big way, so there's innovation coming there. All of those things organized starts to create a whole new opportunity. And I think that's what you really do lead across the state of Texas when you're beating that drum.
And there's now VC funds out there as well that are investing in sort of venture backable funds as well. And that's exciting. We're seeing that happening here in San Antonio as well. The growth of venture funds, I think, Summer, when you started in 2013, and you look at the number, to date you, but like you think about the VC funds that were there, the number and the number that are now today, you look at the kind of growth that's been happening in Austin, like there is more capital now than there used to be a decade ago. And by all means, it's not enough. We still need plenty more. We need more people to be investing in the angel space. We need many more people to be investing in that pre-seed space as well as seeded Series A. But it's growing. I think that if we can begin to have more Texas investors investing in Texas, if we can have more Texas investors thinking about venture as part of their sort of asset allocation and think about their portfolios, the state benefits.
Well, Luis, I appreciate you spending time with us today on Boerne Radio, talking about really an organized approach to entrepreneurialism across the state and how Capital Factory is leading that journey. So thank you for the way that you're building Texas.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
This is Justin McKenzie from Building Texas. Today's segment is brought to you by Das GreenHaus. Das GreenHaus is a business incubator launched here in Boerne to serve our local community. Das GreenHaus is a place where you can come to grow your idea. Our goal is to make Boerne accessible to people who are looking to grow a business, expand a business, or learn more about what's out there in their community and get involved. Visit us at dasgreenhaus.org or come visit us at 7 Upper Balcones Road, Boerne, Texas. Das GreenHaus.
Boerne Radio 103.9 FM. Now let's head over to the Patrick Heath Public Library with Miss Constance for Children's Story Time. As the Patrick Heath Library is open today from 10 to 4, this is Boerne Radio.